Hi, everyone. My name is Nick McLean. I'm the host of Ambition, here with Stewart, Gandolf, the CEO of Healthcare Success. Healthcare Success has really had a great story. They've grown past what many of their peers have done, and I think that there's an interesting story and interesting decisions that Stewart made along the way in order to achieve that success. So, Stewart, first question. Well, before that, thanks for being here, of course.
Sure.
Jumping into the first question, I just would like you to be a little bit immodest here. Why should folks care about healthcare success? Why should your story have any weight when they're thinking about how to grow their own business?
So great question. Thank you. And I'll try not to be too braggy. I'm not really, we're not where I would like to brag, I think, but we're making progress. So I founded this firm back in 2006, and we already had experience doing marketing in healthcare. But what's happened over the last several years is we've been working on the business like, everybody tells you should, right? So in the early days, it was I'll give you a quick little background, and then we'll get to the punchline here. I had worked for another company, became VP of marketing. That was sort of pioneered this world of private practice marketing, and working with, the world was much smaller, the businesses were much smaller, and left the business for a while and did this business as a hobby when we started. So, we literally said, I wonder if I can create a business. I had a partner at the beginning where it's just SEO, paid search, and my reputation without doing anything else, any other investment. And that's very Stewartish. Like, we'll figure everything else out later. Let's get clients first. And we did. And that was pretty rare back then. Nobody started businesses online like as an agency. They would do that for products, but not really for agencies. And we got busy right away. And the early years were, doing a lot of what we had done in the past. There was no recurring revenue. The clients were smaller. It's like we'd work really hard to get to a campaign, then we'd be done, then we'd get to go start again. It's like, that's exhausting. So today we have, we changed the model. It's mostly recurring revenue. We have larger businesses. We chose to go upstream. There's a lot of smaller businesses in the healthcare niche. So we decided to go after larger clients. And so today, like, especially when you're talking about multi-location providers, like, there's only a couple firms that are legitimate, and we're one of them. And the reason why, when I say legitimate, I mean they really have the capabilities to do it at like sort of an enterprise level basis. There's a lot of other good companies. I don't want to sound like I'm being a snob here, but they don't have, like we have the strategy, we have branding, we have creative, we have SEO at the highest level, we have paid search at the highest level, paid social. Like, I don't know of anybody better in our niche. And so there's a couple good companies out there, but most of them everybody else is smaller and they're not really at scale. And so, again, I'm not saying that, we're fantastic, but, we have problems too. But I am happy that we're in a position where we're respected as a leader. And there's a list called the MM 100, which is the top healthcare marketing agencies. We're at the bottom of that list. Typically, but we're on the list, and most of the others are much, much larger, like Ogilvy, J. Walter Thompson, or pharma businesses. So they're not really comparable. So anyway, that's where we are today. I would say that the selling point, though, is a couple of things. One is it's nothing but healthcare. Two is just deep, deep expertise in healthcare, understanding, almost anything you want to talk about, we can talk to, and that's really important. The data-driven results approach, and then also finally the integrated approach, where what I have found is that the branding and the creative, most of our competitors, I'll just say this as I wrap up this opening here, most people in the agency business have gone to a couple different camps. So you have just pure sort of paid advertising, pay-per-click companies. There's a million of those. That's it scales well. It's just really tough because that's all you've got. There's other companies that are branding companies, and so they're really focused on branding. Very few companies, and then they may say they do these things, but they really outsource, or they try to do it with freelancers or whatever. To do it the way we're doing it is hard, where you really are delivering expertise at all these categories. But that's what helps us win, honestly. So hopefully that was helpful.
Oh, very helpful. There's two specific areas like that I'd like to dig into. The first is, well, actually three, but the first I'd like to dig into is the idea of specialization. We often talk to business owners that feel like being specialized has been one of the reasons why they've been able to achieve growth. Now, as I look at your business, as I hear you talk about it, you say that you've been very focused on healthcare. However, I think certain other people might hear that and say, whoa, 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 Stewart, healthcare is a huge animal. There's no way you can consider yourself focused by purely going after the healthcare market because it's not really focused at all. Do you feel like that is a legitimate argument? Do you feel like when you say you focused on healthcare, that's a specific enough niche for you to focus on?
Yeah, I'll give you some guidance on this. By the way, there's a guy out there, Corey Quinn, who has a podcast about agency specialization. So for folks that are interested in that, Corey's a friend of mine. I would say that when we talk about outbound efforts, we're focused on, I mentioned earlier, multi-location providers is our main focus. So when we're doing outbound efforts, that's really where our focus is. So it's much broad, much tighter. There's there's X number of businesses in that category. Inbound, because we have such a strong inbound presence, so we have, I'd say, I don't know, certainly most of our business is multi-location providers, but a substantial portion is everything else. And that could include, we have some small pharma clients. We have device, SaaS. We've done work with health plans. So to me, that's a sweet spot. So we have a diverse, category of clients, because we can help all those other businesses. But when I'm spending money to go after people, it's very tight, and we know exactly who we want to go after. And the reason why I brought up Corey is, Corey. I met Corey after we'd already done all this stuff, right? I just did this by instinct. But for people that are considering that kind of business, you can learn from Corey's podcast, or Corey, if you want to hire him for deeper, not so much about agencies, but just about business, is the idea of niching. And the other part of Corey's discussions are a lot about, you need outbound too. It's really funny. I saw somebody that I'll do a quick aside here, but for people that are growing their business, if those of you that follow HubSpot, has a big, huge conference called Inbound, and it's become almost a religion to HubSpot that, almost like outbound prospecting is kind of unethical and doesn't work anymore. And you should just have a really good blog. And I'm telling you from experience, like the inbound feeds us well. I'd say half of our leads come to us from inbound. But if all we did was sit around and wait for the phone to ring, we would not be where we are today. It needs a combination and a strategy of inbound and outbound. So I feel like our niche works really well for us. We have enough knowledge to be able to play in some really complex leads, but I don't go out trying to convince a SaaS manufacturer, a SaaS company to hire us. They find us. But when we're talking about the sort of multi-location providers, it would be our largest niche. But we do play across the board in all those others.
My wife's a nurse practitioner. She works for a large hospital system. And sometimes she will say that the doctors that get promoted to managerial positions perhaps aren't as sophisticated in the business fundamentals as she might like. As you,
yeah, that's a laugh out loud. That was an involuntary laugh out loud. So, that's a classic dilemma in healthcare. And it's changing though, because it used to be, I mentioned earlier with the company I was at before I did this one, we worked with almost all private practice doctors, and they're all good people. We liked, well, almost all, they were good people. We liked them. We worked with them. Business was not their forte, and it's challenging. If you think about it, just keeping up as a doctor is plenty. Trying to run a business is a wildly different skill set. So in fairness, nobody's good at everything. I'm not good at everything. I'm horrible at basketball, right? So, like this one thing that I do running this agency, I'm really good at that. And I'm a specialized, hyper specialized individual. What I do, if you have a guitar on the wall, which is usually in frame, I'm a good guitar player with a lot of practice and effort. It's not natural, but some of the things I do, we do well. And so going back to doctors, they weren't generally trained in business. They're generally not interested in business. But they're also used to being at the top of the food chain, which means they run everything. So they're just used to making decisions. So it's a dynamic that's tough. There are certainly many doctors I've worked with in the past that have gone back and gotten an MBA, so they understand business better. There's also some naturally just really good business people. They're just so smart. They just figure it out. But that's obviously the exception in a population of humans. That's not everybody's going to be good at everything. It's very, very rare. So that's where, today with healthcare, doctors will always be influential in providers. When I say providers, I mean either medical groups, individual doctors we don't work with as much, or hospitals are still sort of a provider. So they're always very influential. But today, as the business changes, they're less and less involved in the day to day because it just doesn't work. I mean, what'll happen is, if you have an individual doctor and they get a partner, and they get another partner, and there's 4 or 5 of them, everything is by democracy. So they have, a couple locations, they've got a business growing, everything is a democracy. When you get to around 10 to 20, that just doesn't work anymore. It collapses. And so at that point, they usually opt to get professional managers. Now, sometimes the doctor will be may lead the group from a sort of visionary standpoint, but the ones that succeed usually have people that are professionals at what they do, right? It's like anything else. So that's where that is, and that's probably what your wife is experiencing. It's really common. It's a old joke among doctors. Doctors will probably it's like, yeah, I'm a horrible business person, but that's not a knock on them. It's like nobody's good at everything, and it's like, I've spent years and years doing what I do, and somebody coming out of medical school isn't going to know more about what I do than they do. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pick my doctors based off of how well I think they can read a P&L or a balance sheet. It's totally
Right.
unrelated.
Yeah. And there's also the experience factor. It's not just about smarts, right? There's experience and judgment and wisdom, and that's stuff that comes over time. It isn't something that just naturally drops out of the sky. I don't care if you're smart. I'm smart too. I did really well in my stats. So it's not, but I didn't want to be a doctor. So it's like it's just, that's a pretty common thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One aspect of my personality or my leadership style or whatever you want to call it is that I feel like I am good at articulating the endpoint, the vision. But if early on, if I start to get questions about how we will get there, that I really haven't thought through that very well sometimes. And I heard you make a similar comment about how when you started the business, you had these ideas, and somebody said, "How are you going to do it?" And you said, "I don't know. I'm just going to get there." In my own personal example, I feel like at times that it's been hard to motivate the troops whenever you don't have a clearly articulated strategy in order to achieve that end goal. Have you experienced that same challenge, or were you able to circumvent that challenge somehow?
So I would say the reality is only entrepreneurs think like I did, right? So for good and ill, like there's good and ill in both of this. So for example, when at the exact same time I started our company, there was another former colleague that tried to start her own company, but she was more of a manager and very, very analytical. And so she went out and bought office space. This is kind of a fun story to me, at least. She went out and got office space. She went out and bought filing cabinets back. This is pre sort of digital world, or at the beginning of the digital world. She had all of her folders labeled. She had like everything in place, all the office equipment. And she's like, okay, now you're your clients. Like that's when she thought of clients. After she'd already rented office space, she had all this stuff done. I'm like, wow, no. I'm not doing any of that. I'll find a client and then service it, and I'll get better and better at this. And so I went to my network. I found a former client. I did I don't know, it was a $30,000 project. That was the seed money. I never even had to invest money from my own bank. And we just kept, and there were times, though, I should say, that we didn't take a check for a year. So it's not like it was all easy. But the entrepreneurial side, that willingness to leap and figure it on the way down is just like baffling to some people. But that's really how most businesses, I think, get started. But that's not sustainable. And that's the thing. So if you're naturally oriented to action, I used to read a lot of sort of business stuff, self-help stuff. And one of the things Tony Robbins used to talk about, and probably still does, is massive action. And, that's what it took to get stuff going, massive action. But at some point as you grow, that all falls apart. There's a famous book called The E-Book Revisited by Michael Gerber that talks about people making cakes. And if you're a really good cake maker, that's great. That doesn't mean you can run a business. So you suddenly have to take yourself out of the business, learn to operate and run the business, not be in the business. And so that's like at the very beginning stages. So if you kind of go from entrepreneur just doing stuff and being essentially a freelancer, really, with some partners, and then you go to the next level where you hire, okay, you've got a team of maybe 6, 10. That's a really commonplace for agencies, and generating maybe a couple $1 million in gross revenue. That's a really bumpy phase. And for me in particular, every mistake we could possibly have made, we made. I mean, really, it's like I'll just write a book about what not to do as an agency owner from someone who did all these stupid things. And so, but that was never my focus. It was just that unrelenting drive to like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Looking back, it could have been a lot easier for sure. So in your past, that's the key problem there. I think looking back is talent. So if I'm going to give advice to people who listen to this, is the talent factor, and it's really hard to overcome because you don't know talent. How do you know a good accountant if you've never done accounting? How do you know a good paid search person? Now, in my case, I learned paid search. I learned SEO. Like this was early on in these categories. I was at all the big internet conferences, and so even though most people think of me as a creative person, some people think of me as a creative person. Some people think of me as a business person. Other people think of me as a tech geek because I play in all those worlds, and that to me is just play. It's fun. So that really helped because I learned all this stuff personally, so I was able to judge talent in that category. But in other areas, were complete blind spots. And so, for example, I won't name specific people or even specific positions, but there were people that I liked that became part of our family, but they never really fully did their job well. And I look back and like I put up with that for years. And wow, was that until we finally had the courage to make a change in some of those positions, we would have never gotten anywhere. Just never. So like that's a thing too, is so building out your team and thinking about building out the business and thinking about operations and thinking about scaling. And that is all really hard because, another thing that might be interesting to your listeners is I got successful because I was able to make stuff happen, jump off a cliff and figure it out on the way down. And so I was always when I was doing marketing, I was in roles where I could add value by just figuring it out. I love being resourceful. That to me is one of my favorite qualities. And that really worked to get us started because I would be in positions like marketing and sales. I'd do things my own way. I'd just figure it out. But that is not what it takes to run a successful company. You need systems and operations and strong people at every level. So that getting from that bumpy stage to like a real company is tough, man. That's all I can say. Because what was the skill to get necessary to get started is different when it takes to keep it running and to grow it. Those are different skill sets.
Hit on a lot of themes that are recurring themes as we talk to entrepreneurs, from the need for systems and processes and procedures as you grow from more of a, for lack of a better term, mom and pop type operation to a real company, as you said, as well as the fact that you as the leader need to develop certain skills or at least emphasize certain skills or attributes as the company grows as well. As you think about your leadership style, do you feel like you're a different leader now that you've achieved that scale versus when you got started? Or do you just feel like certain aspects of your leadership style are emphasized more heavily now that you're at this size?
God, I hope I'm different. That's for sure. Again, when I was starting, it was an extension of my previous life where I just kind of jumped over to what was fun and interesting to me versus what was the right decision. And, after I mentioned earlier, there's been a couple of years there where I'd made nothing. Like, for example, we hired the wrong person for finance and we, became an unintentional nonprofit and actually lost money after working really, really hard. So, there's a few years that I did that. I was always willing to take that kind of risk though. And I'm a conservative fiscally, so I was always able to do that. It wasn't like one paycheck away from doom. But I would say that my understanding of like, I used to laugh about systems, like we don't need that. Or even branding, I didn't understand the power of true branding because I was more of a performance marketer. So I just understand this stuff at a deeper level. It's not like I probably could have parroted this stuff we're talking about now, but I didn't understand it at the deep level I do now. And again, going back to the people part, because another challenge that I didn't mention is that good people want to work with other good people, and good people, especially if you're trying to create a mature company, the kind of people that want to work for an entrepreneur aren't usually the ones that want to work for a mature company. So it's like getting to that stage where you have, um, the people that are willing to work, like the people we have now are like, a lot of them are best in class at what they do. They're really hard to recruit. Like I couldn't have recruited them back when we were in our, jammies, so to speak, right? Like we couldn't have afforded them, but they wouldn't want to work for us anyway because we weren't serious. So again, those are all the obstacles, at least in the agency business. I don't know about other businesses, but in our business, it is very, very people driven. I think it was Warren Buffett, was it Goldman Sachs he bought one of the, it was like, it was really hard for him to understand that at 5 o'clock, all your assets just go out the door. It's not like a manufacturing plant, right? Where you get to have this all there. Somebody can correct me in the notes. I'm not sure but I do remember that concept. And that's the way it is in the agency business. It's human capital. And so to recruit the team, to retain the team, to have the sense of who to say yes to, like all of that is just really hard. And it's like, so I think I've got much more wisdom about that. Our hiring track record is wildly better than it used to be. So that would be the biggest thing that I feel like I've learned is hiring the right people and then having the vision. But it still takes, it's funny, I just got out of a call before this meeting talking to one of our internal leaders about planning for next year. It still requires the combination of different people. Like for me to have the sort of vision and willingness to say yes, to have him to be absolutely expert at what he does, and then to go back over to the rest of the executive team, and then go convince finance we should do this. Like there's some skill sets there. Like everybody does their own thing, but it really still needs to be led. Even these very senior leaders need to be led. And, I'll give you one other comment. You're talking about stuff that's fun to me, so I'm just sort of rambling here, but hopefully it's helpful.
Oh yeah.
I remember I never thought of myself as a leader until I did this personal development class and like I was 30-ish, and it wasn't going well. Like we were doing this project together, everything just sucked. And we had a supposed leader and he had lots of charisma, but we were going nowhere. And finally I just couldn't take it. And we're like, look, okay, I know what to do. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. I had never done that before. And the whole team was just thrilled, including the supposed leader, that somebody took charge and made decisions. Because until then, we were just flailing. And that's what it still takes to this day. Like somebody's got to make a decision. So, anyway.
I completely agree with what you said, but there's always this struggle between being involved, being willing to make that decision, but being too involved and not letting your team the sufficient bandwidth and authority they need. I guess what I mean by that is...
Yeah, no, I get it. So that's a continuum. So we made some really incorrect, I'll say, hiring decisions just before COVID in terms of the management team. And we didn't anticipate, now in fairness to them, we didn't anticipate going into a worldwide pandemic a couple days later like we did. Because by the time they were onboarded, it was like February, March 2020. But they were absolutely, and I'm sure they would agree, they were the wrong fit culturally and skill set wise. It just was not a good fit. So at one point, the goal was to turn over the leadership of the company to them. Again, this is exacerbated by a worldwide pandemic. Suddenly we weren't with our people. But, so I delegated, and I would say from 100% over delegated. And then when that didn't work out, I had to come back in wildly more granular than I'd ever been because I just had to make changes. Like we're in a position where from the outside, we had our bumps, but people wouldn't see it. But inside, we had to change a bunch of people on staff. We were keeping clients. So again, the financials went down a little bit with COVID, but it betrays like how much stress that was. Plus, we were in a worldwide pandemic. So anyway, during that period, like in 2021, I just got back involved and grabbed the wheel and said, I'm in charge. And that's what leaders do, right? Like we're in a moment of like, we need to take action. We can't be talking anymore. And then, as soon as I found the right people, I began letting go of the controls again and letting them do their job. And so my goal is to empower my team. I mean, I just got out of a call with one of my favorite people on my team who's incredibly strong, one of the best people I've ever hired. Like I just told him, my finishing comments in that meeting was like, I've given you everything you've asked for, right? Like that's what I try to do, but he still needs guidance and the coaching and all those things. But it is a continuum. Like, please God, if you're listening and you're trying to build a business, don't just give up the controls right away. let go easy, because the plane can go down pretty damn fast. There's a lot of stuff like culture and vision and stuff, and a new management team may not understand that. And even if they're good people, it's like you're really taking a big risk. You suddenly say, all right, you're holding the plane wheels, and you decide, okay, I'm going to go play golf. Let go. It might not end where you plan to be.
Completely understand that. You've mentioned culture and people being so important to your success and whatnot. Sometimes we get lucky. We have a superstar performer that also just has all sorts of intrinsic motivation to do exactly what is needed. However, I don't feel like we're always that lucky, and certainly at different levels of the organization, I feel like that intrinsic motivation differs. How has your role as leader, or how important has it been for you to have to motivate the troops to get them aligned to a common goal so that they show up to work wanting to be a productive member of the team to pull their weight, so to speak?
Okay, so I'll give you another insight that I've finally figured out at a deeper level. First of all, there's a fallacy in what you just said. Respectfully, that because I used to make this decision that it was all about superstars, right? And that's a real challenge for me, because like I was really good with the stuff I did. I would just figure it out, and I had the ability to be resourceful, just figure it out, and be, a star at the stuff that I was doing. And so I was always just trying to find superstars. So if I want to solve sales, I find a superstar salesperson. If I want to solve, accounting, I find a superstar accounting. If I want to solve, whatever you want to solve, just get a really good, process expert. The problem with that is when you find those stars, that's not scalable. You can't build a sales team of sales superstars. Nobody has that, like Apple doesn't have that, so it's like trying to build a company around superstars is really, really tough. So you didn't exactly say that, but I just want to say that's a paradigm shift that people have to make. Is like, you want superstars, you got it, but you need to build systems that will unleash the power of a superstar, but bring the everyday performers up to good, right? Because like you're not going to be able to find superstars at every position. It's just not realistic. So then you go back to the intrinsic motivation, and that's something that we became virtual after pandemic. We had a beautiful office space, just nobody wanted to go there. And minutes ago, I just heard about a new employee we'll probably hire across the country in Virginia Beach, that we would never have had if we still had office space. We wouldn't be able to take advantage of this person. So the advantage of being virtual is that you get to get talent from anywhere, and it's certainly a recruiting tool. Boy, people like to work virtually. The challenge is two things. One, building culture is tough because little things can become the most terrible insult in the world. Oh my God. Nobody sees each other in the halls. There's nothing, so that's a problem. And two, there are a certain subset of people that just don't want to do anything. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to be ready to watch and see what happens. Because there's people that'll go out on play dates instead of being at their job, and they'll do as little as they possibly can and maybe do a second job. And so I'm not saying that we've had that personally, but I can tell you it's out there. And, we've had to make some changes to our team on some folks that we're pretty convinced weren't working very hard. So I think that it's hard to build. I'll give you some things also that hopefully are helpful insights. It's really hard to build curiosity. Like you can't build curiosity. Like people are either curious or not. And it's really hard to build you mentioned sort of intrinsic motivation. I don't know how much you can do there either. So it's like you're looking for people that are goal-oriented, typically, people that have an intrinsic motivation, interview around that, because this is really hard to build it. Like if they really would rather be, walking the beach with their dog than working, and they're just going to work to get by, I get it, but that's probably not going to be a power play on your team. Or if it is, you're going to have to work around all this other stuff, which becomes another problem. Again, like with the smaller agencies can have that superstar and everybody just sort of works around their flaws, but that falls apart when you scale, for sure.
It's interesting. I was talking to a dad of a friend of my son's, has a fourth grader that signed up for soccer. First time he'd ever played soccer. Talked to the coach, who's actually a pretty well-known coach. He's coached some other bigger teams and just decided to coach his son's team. So was very experienced. And the dad told me, I didn't even know if he was going to make the team. Talked to the coach afterwards. The coach invited him to play. And what the coach said is very consistent with what you said. He said, I can't teach aggressive. I can't teach the desire to win. Your son has that. I can work with the fundamentals. And again, I just think that that is very consistent with your idea of not being able to teach motivation, not being able to teach that inner drive.
For sure. It's there or it's not. And also, there's people, everybody has different strengths, right? I certainly have, as I said earlier, my share of weaknesses. I have a lot of them. Ask my team. But I think it's just like putting together a team and finding the right combination of variables. But some of that stuff that has to be consistent, right? Like people that have respect of other team members for, always being about doing the right thing. So like, again, there's a certain subset of people during our many mistakes in the past that will either hide out and do as little as possible. But I'll give you my metaphor. This is a sad one, right? So you have a boat full of people. Some people will row, according to plan. They all row with each other. They're working hard. They're pulling their weight. There are some people that'll probably row in the opposite direction just because that's their personality. There's going to be some people that sit around and criticize the other people who are rowing but do nothing. There's going to be people that might be putting holes in the boat. So, those hole builders and the people that are criticizing others, you have to kind of move them out of the boat because you're all going to drown. So it's like, not in a harsh way, but at least in my experience, if you're not, and it's hard for me because I want everybody to win, and it's hard for me to make those tough decisions still. It never gets easy, but I've done it. I guess it's the experience of doing what happens when you don't do these things is even more painful than doing the thing that's hard in the moment. So again, going back to Tony Robbins, which I haven't read in years, but just came up today. He used to talk about people do a lot more to avoid pain than to get pleasure. So it's like the pain of like getting rid of somebody who's not, or releasing someone to a new life that's not, is pulling the boat in the wrong direction is difficult. But if you don't do that, you're going to end up losing good people. You're going to end up having a crappy culture because they're all going to say like, why does this person get away with that? And it's never easy though. It sucks. It just sucks.
Huge weak side of myself. I mean, there have definitely been situations where there's been folks on the team was reluctant to move on past them simply out of feelings of loyalty. They were doing a good job, but not great, but also not terrible. However, in almost all of these circumstances, after we parted ways, a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month or 2 months down the road, it's so clear that it was a mistake to keep that person as long as we did. Now, nobody has perfect judgment and knows exactly when or who shouldn't be on the team, but sometimes I just really struggle and acknowledge that I tend to let some of those situations linger longer than they should. And I think it's just going to be something that I continue to struggle with. And it's a blind spot that I'll have to keep in mind as I continue my leadership journey, if you will.
Yep. Well, everybody's watching. So if nobody's like, it's not like, if somebody's like causing problems internally, eventually, people are like, why did it take you so long? Because they're, so again, I've had situations in the past where we had people that we liked, that we thought were doing an okay job. But, especially the ones that really is a cancer in our world is where somebody doesn't pull their weight, because then it makes the people that are working hard go, well, why am I working so hard if this person over here, gets away with murder? Everybody knows it, right? Everybody knows it. So not only wasting that money on that person, you're also killing your culture. So it's not for the faint of heart. I have somebody on my team who started as an intern. She worked with me as my assistant, helped me manage the marketing side. Now she's off in other parts of the company, one of my favorite people in the world. And I talk to her, sometimes she just giggles like, Stewart, God, your job is hard. Nobody knows how hard your job is like I do. It's true. It's not for the weak of heart. I'm just stubborn. I don't know what else I would do at this stage. So,
you know what? You made one comment that certainly was a different lens through which I at least look at processes and procedures. A lot of times, my personal opinion and maybe some of the other folks that I've talked to really feel like processes and procedures are a result, or the need for those is a result of growth, and that it's not necessarily additive, but it allows the structure to be in place so that you can take those additional steps and keep growing. However, what I heard you say is that with certain processes and procedures in place, you can take a average performer and make them great, or you can take a great performer and turn them into a superstar. Can you just talk a
Let's
little bit, a
yeah,
little?
I'll give you an example there. That's let's talk about sales. So I brought that up before, and that'll probably relate to a lot of people. Everybody wants sales. Well, not everybody, but most people want sales. So the myth of the myth of the superstar sales one is one that I bought into because, I built this company from being able to sell, and I never looked at myself as a salesperson, but it turned out I could do it because I was really just trying to be. I really knew what I was doing, and people trusted me, and I tried to give them ethical solutions. And so a lot of clients said yes. And especially earlier in my career, where I was working in an environment where I was a seminar leader, like 80% of my clients would buy stuff from me every time I did it. So so I just got, that was an environment though, by the way, just as a quick aside, where I was doing a seminar 2-3 times a month, where you just get really good, really fast because you're getting the ball. Like most people don't get a chance to pitch, a few times a year. I was pitching 20 times a month. So it's like you just get better faster. If you're out swinging at the ball, you're not just talking about it, but you're actually in the game, because most people are spending all their time just trying to get that initial meeting. So I misunderstood. I thought that it was all about finding fantastic salespeople, but that's not scalable. And I actually have another person on my team I worked with back then who's also really good at being able to sell. But the problem with that is it's not scalable. You're out trying to find another superstar salesperson, and like salespeople, a lot of superstar salespeople are really independent, want to do things their own way, and and they never get better because they think they know everything. So that's the challenge. And we actually just hired a sales trainer, which if your listeners are interested in, is Chris Jennings' group, is the group that we're working with. That I've known Chris for a long time and his team, but because we have people that are just starting out in their sales career that need guidance. We have people sort of in the middle, and we have people that are very experienced. But everybody can get better, and that includes me. So, right now when I'm on talking to a new prospect, I can, I'm just unconsciously confident in what I do. And so there are times where I recognize when I get off the call, like, wait, I did like 80% of the talking. That's a sales 101. Don't do that. So, it's like you get sloppy and, it's like, wait, that was dumb. So we're putting everybody back through that because the goal is to take the superstars and empower them, make sure they're doing the basics and bring in new ideas and make them very, very good at what they do. The people that are just starting out in their careers and the opposite of that spectrum, well, they're not going to be successful. Just go out and here's a list, go call it, because they're not going to get anywhere. It's like a fly hitting the window over and over again. Bam, 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 bam. Eventually the fly gets tired and moves to another house. So, it's like, I think that having a sales process that everybody agrees, here's how we handle an inbound call. Here's how we handle an outbound. Here's how we engage. What's the objective of the first meeting, the second meeting, the third meeting. So this applies to all sort of departments, but in the world of sales, I think it's a little bit easier for people to comprehend that, waiting to try to find the superstar salesperson. And I'll leave you with this thought that I just got in discussing this with my friends over at Chris Jennings. Name to me, like for people that are in the sales world, there's usually companies that people think are like, they look at as like, wow, they're a really good sales team. Back in the day, I don't know if it still is, it was Xerox. Xerox had a very specific sales training. I think it was called PSS or something. But like nobody that's admired for sales as a company lets people ever do what they want. They all have a sales process, every single one. So it's like, okay, they're not relying on a superstar sales strategy. You shouldn't either. So hopefully that was helpful. That's a really easy way to understand that. Like it just isn't going to be effective without process. And that is against my nature. Like I don't really want to have process. I want to go out and touch every daisy in the field as fast as I can, but it's not what works.
It's the concept of slowing down to eventually be able to run faster, I think is how I might describe it.
Yep, for sure.
One thing that's interesting that you might not be surprised to hear is sometimes we'll talk to business owners that are very proud about their business. And I'm being a little bit facetious here, but they'll say, well, all you need to do is go out and hire one salesperson and you can double the business, because we've never had a salesperson. So surely adding one person would be able to double the business. Hearing what you talk about is part of the reason why we don't believe that story when we hear how easy it would be to grow by simply adding one person.
Okay, so talk about that for a sec. So first of all, it can happen, but one data point does not equal a trend, right? So that's the challenge. If you're small, everything's anecdotal. So you're not looking at the large law of large numbers. So it's really easy to draw the wrong conclusions from a single data point. Like, for example, like salespeople suck. They have no value to my company. Or, wow, all I needed was a great salesperson. Look how great I did. So it is possible, especially when you're small, to go from, like, if you're making, if you're grossing $100,000 in gross revenue and you've never done any sales, and you go find something that brings you up to 1 million, like, wow, that increased you by 10. Can they take you to 10? No. So it's like, it's a level of scale, and you can learn the wrong lessons. It's really easy to do that in life, is to learn the wrong lessons. So, I try really hard to learn about best practices and eventually get out of my own way and say, okay, fine. I tried it my way. I didn't believe it. It failed. And, again, these things it's different stages of a business. Like, I've known sales training for a long time. I didn't bring it into my company until just recently because we were doing sort of fine-ish without it. But, but then I realized, wait, I would prefer, for example, going back to sales, a diversified portfolio of sources of inbound and outbound marketing. I'd like to have a diversified source of sales, so not all my eggs aren't in one basket, right? That's just dumb. And as you scale, again, what are you going to do? Try to find superstars. Well, what if they hate each other? What if, and the bigger problem is, unless you're a salesperson, even if you are, there is a trick. Here's an insight for you too. Even if you are a sales VP, I've been told that sales VPs win rate is at 50% choosing talent. 50%. These are sales VPs. These people do nothing but that. If you're some entrepreneur making widgets, really? You're going to have better success than they do in choosing somebody? So if you pick one person, your odds are probably, if you don't have any experience in sales, 90% chance you're going to fail. So, I don't know, maybe we're running out of time here. So maybe being humble. Because, like, I can tell you, I'm certainly more humble. If I sound cocky, I'm not. I've just told you I've made every mistake you possibly can. It's just experience and wisdom. But could have gotten there faster if I'd been less boneheaded or less stubborn and less committed to figuring out myself, for sure.
Well, certainly would have been a different path. Maybe you would have ended up at the same position, but certainly wouldn't have taken the same route.
Yeah.
We are approaching the bottom of the hour. Really just want to give you the opportunity to get anything out there about your business that you would like to. If there's any questions that I should have asked that I did not, I just want to give you a couple minutes if there's anything you'd like to get off your chest.
Not really. I mean, we went to a little different direction than we usually do. I'm just trying to share some insights because this is more about, not so much about creating an agency, but creating a business. And I feel like those are just some lessons. I mean, it kind of feels endless and daunting. So maybe the final comment is, it's hard. It's really hard. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Like, yeah, sure, there might be a story once in a while somebody opens a business and backs into a multi-million-dollar business. That certainly wasn't my experience, and I don't know anybody who did. So, do you want to count on being, somebody that shows up at, the diner and becomes a movie star? Well, it happened, but it's not going to happen to you. So I would just say, have that sort of mindset and resiliency that if you're trying to build a business, that it's just really, really, really hard. At least it was for me. And I don't know any other, I know some successful business owners where it might have been easier for some than others, but best case scenario, if you're going in and thinking this is going to be a cakewalk, it's going to be really, really hard. And then also I'd say, if you're stuck, it's probably time to find some outside advisors or, some strong employees. And outside advisors could be, I did a Vistage for a while. That was not the right time for us, but I've heard that's good. There's other groups out there, or just finding mentors that really know what's going on, hopefully closely related to your industry so they understand it. By the way, most people are willing to help a little. The challenge is time. I never understood before, when people reach out to me, go get on a call with them for just a half hour to give them free advice. I can't. My own employees don't have time with me. It's not like I'm being, difficult. I just can't. My wife has, a hard time reaching me sometimes. I'm so busy. So, I would say, if you're interested in some of the stuff that we do, first of all, we do have a marketing agency. So anything to do with healthcare, I don't know anybody better. We have our flaws like any company, but we're pretty strong. So that's at healthcaresuccess.com. But more likely for most of your listeners, if they're interested in marketing kinds of topics, particularly healthcare topics, We have a podcast, we have a blog, we have webinar series, we have ebooks, and we also have an aggressive, or I personally have an aggressive LinkedIn presence. So we have tons of free advice on how to market and how to grow and how to do through healthcare that would apply to really. We try to make it apply to everybody, from sophisticated marketers to newbies, and we cover topics like I don't know, influencer marketing to nutritional advertising to branding to whatever strategies. So that's a resource. It's all at healthcaresuccess.com. And you can certainly link out to me and say hi on LinkedIn.
That's great. We'll have links to all those in the show comments below. Stewart, I just want to thank you for your time. Really informative, really enjoyed the conversation. I call me a nerd, but these are the types of conversations that I really find enjoyable. So probably not the life of the party, but maybe I've found my spot as a podcast host.
Yeah, awesome. Good job. And nice interview. Good luck. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.